Hello, everybody. Here we are. I'm gone for 3 days. Can't believe this. Anyways, to get started, here we go. And you guys are going to be able to hear my lovely voice. And I sure as heck hope that this video recording works very well and that the sound in my lovely classroom, the surround sound that I have, you guys will be able to hear my voice crisp and clear. I've turned up my speaker or my microphone volume or catching of my microphone, whatever you call that. So it should be able to pick up my voice very well, and hopefully you can hear the videos that I'll play. I've got a few videos in here just for Sydney because I know how much she loves to watch these videos in class. So anyways, here we go. So you guys, what we're doing is we're just starting out a new unit, one of the last units on genetics and evolution. And this one is one of my favorite units because these are probably the most vital parts of biology. You cannot understand biology, you cannot understand genetics alone without understanding evolution. And you can't understand evolution without understanding genetics. They go hand in hand. And the concepts of genetics and evolution then will tie into cell biology, to microbiology, to ecology, and all these other concepts that we talk about in our biology classes. And so these are vital. And so to get started, I just wanted to point that out, just the importance that this has. And we will be spending several weeks on this concept, diving in pretty deep into mathematical modeling with this. And yeah, just getting some data for it and looking at how genetics drives evolution. All right, so the first thing I want you guys to do is as I'm going through this, please pull out some notes, take a few notes on this. So if you need to pause the video as you guys take some notes, please do so. I will have a few videos that you'll need to take some notes on. I do not have a note catcher or anything, so you'll just need to do this in your notes there, in your notebooks. Anyways, the first question that we're going to talk about is this: what are the benefits of genetic variation? This is an interesting question because everywhere we look, we see genetic variation all the time, right? And we have to determine, is this a beneficial genetic variation? Is it harmful, or does it not have any effect really on the survivability of that species or that organism? And so, for example, here's a picture. It's kind of blurry. I'm sorry about that, but of some cats here. These cats have different hair color. Okay, so that's a variation. And we could dive in deeper into other variations that these cats have. Humans right here, we have a ton of different variation that each of us have. We're not the same, thank goodness, and so there's tons of variability. We have skin color, hair color, eye color, height, flexibility. I mean, there's so many, right? We have variation in our blood types. We have different strengths of immune system, of immunity. We have it's so many different things, you guys. It's insane that all play a vital role in this process. So to get started, though, when we're starting to answer this question, what are the benefits of genetic variation, or where does genetic variation come about? Let's watch this video real quick. As you're watching it, just be thinking, take down a few notes of what you observe as you're watching this.
Imagine a world where only one population of organisms exists, and every member of that population has the exact same genetic material. Everyone has the same eye color, hair texture,
ear shape, and everyone is left-handed.
Creepy, isn't it? Fortunately, it's also totally impossible. Our world is filled with and shaped by genetic variation. Genetic variation comes about through two processes: mutation and recombination. Mutations are DNA misprints that occur during cell division. Recombination is when alleles get shuffled around during sexual reproduction. Because of these processes, when an individual is born, it will have variations in its genes that were not present in its parents. Some variations help or harm an individual's ability to survive and reproduce. A gene variation in a bird that makes it unable to see color is harmful because it makes it harder for the bird to find food or spot a mate. And a variation that makes it unable to fly could be deadly. Most harmful variations are quickly eliminated from a population. Members that have those variations are less likely to reproduce. Other gene variations are helpful. A plant that's more attractive to pollinators than the ones around it might have a better chance of passing its genes to the next generation. Helpful variations tend to stick around in a population, since the organisms that have them are likely to reproduce. But most gene variations are neither good or bad, just different. Minor changes in ear shape, fur texture, pattern, eye color, and many other visible traits are neutral. Because they don't affect survival or reproduction, they typically stay in a population. That's why many populations have multiple alleles for most genes. Whether a variation is harmful, neutral, or helpful often depends on context. A long neck can be an advantage for animals that eat leaves from tall trees, but if they live in grasslands, not so much. Small, leathery leaves could be helpful in a sunny, dry environment, but in a wet, cloudy place, they might not gather enough sunlight. Because conditions often change, some variations are held in balance. A larger, more muscular body might help an animal escape predators, but because a larger body has greater needs, it could be a liability during a food or water shortage. Bright colors make a fish more visible to mates, but also to predators. The weeding out of harmful variations and accumulation of helpful and neutral variations makes a population more resilient. Populations with little variation are often vulnerable to extinction, and environmental change could be disastrous. Populations with more genetic variation are more flexible and robust. Even if a new virus comes along or the environment changes and most of the population is wiped out, there's a better chance that some members will survive, reproduce, and pass on their alleles. Variety, as they say, is the spice of life. Or variation is the spice of life. Well, actually, variation is essential to life because it makes things more interesting, but it's also necessary. Yeah, okay, you get it. I'm done.
All right. So after watching that cheesy video, again, Sydney, that was for you. So I do like what they talk about there, and hopefully you got the big gist of this. What is the benefit of genetic variation? And the idea here is the more genetic variation there is in a population of species, the more likely it is to survive longer, right? And be able to be more resilient to whatever the environment throws at them. And when we're applying this concept, anyways, it's kind of interesting. And we see it all the time, and there's so much research going on about this because the environment changes all the time. And right now our environment's changing faster than ever. And so we have to have that genetic variation or species go extinct. And that's what we're actually seeing, right? So for genetic variation, it makes evolution possible, kind of like what we talked about here. And it does that because of three things. The first one is genetic variation. It has to occur in the DNA, okay? When we're talking about genetic variation, it has to apply to the DNA segments in that organism, or evolution cannot apply to it, okay? The next thing is our genetic variation. The genetic variation is going to change and alter the phenotypes that we observe. So the physical characteristics that we see in the population. So just a reminder, phenotype, physical characteristics, genotype would be the allele combinations. And there's three types. We could be homozygous dominant, heterozygous, or homozygous recessive. So, and then the last one is natural selection. And this one should be a review for you guys from biology. But natural selection is one of the major driving forces of evolution. And natural selection can only act on genetic information, on the DNA. Okay? So it cannot apply to anything other than the DNA itself. So before we start diving into this, I want to go over two key terms. Make sure you guys understand when I say population, what that means, and also gene pool. We'll be using these two terms significantly throughout the next several weeks. So a population is a group of organisms that are of the same species, and they can produce viable and fertile offspring. And what I mean by that is that the offspring are also able to reproduce. And so an example of this would be, for example, a donkey and a horse. They are two separate species, and how we know that is because if they do mate, they are able to create offspring, which is the mule, but the mule is not fertile. It cannot also it is sterile is the word that they use, and so it cannot have offspring of its own. And so we would say that the horse and the donkey are not similar species. So therefore, when we're looking at data from them, we cannot combine those into the same population. The next one is gene pool. So gene pool is when we're looking at a single population of species, we're looking at all the alleles and all the genes in that population. And we'll dive into this a lot more. Just understand that the gene pool is all the alleles and the genes in the population. All right. Sources of genetic variation. So the video talked about these. We know that genetic variation is vital for species to be able to adapt to their environment. If the less genetic variability you have, the less likely it is to adapt, and you would have more drastic consequences because of that. And so, how does genetic variation come about? At the very beginning of that video, it talked about two ways. The first one is mutation. Okay, we just got done learning about this. So any change in the nucleotide or base pairing, and also you could have changes in the gene itself. Okay, so you can have chromosomal mutations or nucleotide point mutations. The other one is gene shuffling, and what I mean by gene shuffling is simply crossing over. Okay, and we know this happens during prophase 1 of meiosis. And so during meiosis, we know that the homologous chromosomes can cross over, and when they do this, they can cause variability. And this is what causes variability in the offspring that is observed right here, right there. Okay, and so we see that there is some variability there because of that. In the outcomes that we could possibly have when sexual reproduction is occurring. So really quick, let's play this video. Another one for Sydney. She better be there today.
Genes come in different versions, called alleles. Alleles have variations in their DNA sequences. The variations might change the amino acid sequence of the protein the gene codes for, or when, where, or how much protein is made. A population can have many alleles for each gene. Each organism's particular combination of alleles for all of their genes influences their traits, some that you can see and some that you can't. Pairs of chromosomes have the same genes arranged in the same order, often hundreds or even thousands of them. For organisms with two parents, each individual has two alleles for every gene. The pairs of alleles can be the same, or they can be different. In the cells that will become eggs or sperm, the chromosomes are copied, then they recombine. Alleles are shuffled. They break in random places and swap pieces, making chromosomes with new allele combinations. Gametes get one copy of each chromosome. When gametes from two individuals join, each offspring will have a different combination of alleles from both parents, giving them a unique set of characteristics. This shuffling happens with each generation, contributing to genetic variation within a population.
All right, great video. These guys do an awesome job. This is the University of Utah. They do an excellent job. I really like them. So, here we go. So we just understood, they talked about gene shuffling there, showing how these genes can, when they do shift and change, it's due to crossing over. All right, so the last next question I want you guys to think about is, how do species change over time then? So we know that's the genetic variability that is causing species to be able to adapt and change, but how do they do so? And one thing that I want to make very clear is this huge misconception that I always hear, and it's the idea that organisms in themselves can evolve. And if there's one thing you get from this whole lecture, let it be this. So listen. Organisms cannot evolve. Populations can evolve. So populations of species can change over time. Evolution can apply to organisms by their phenotype. For example, let's say that you are a moth. I'm going to use the moth example here. And you have white wings. But you live in a black environment. Okay? Are you adapted to your environment? Are you best adapted? No, obviously not. You don't blend in, you're going to stand out. Something's going to eat you more quickly than your friend who has black wings, okay? That's better adapted to the environment. And so evolution you did not evolve. You cannot change your phenotype. You cannot say, okay, well, I'm going to change my wing colors naturally to black and be better adapted to my environment. I can't do that as an individual. What will happen is I will get eaten. I will not be able to reproduce. And so therefore the traits that I had are not passed on to the next generation. And I hope that kind of makes sense and makes a visual for you of how organisms can't evolve. Evolution does not it goes after the organism, but the organism can't change. It can't evolve. It's the population over time will shift and change. To make this to show this a little bit better, let's look at this example. So this example right here is one of my all-time favorites, and it's a pretty classical example that's always used. But I can't help but bring it up because these two researchers are some of my favorite researchers that I've ever learned about, and it's Peter and Rosemary Grant. They don't go there anymore, but for a very long periods of their life, as they were researching, they went to the Galapagos Islands, where Darwin actually went on his voyage. And anyways, they went to the Galapagos Islands, and what they do is they would study these finches, and they found some amazing data that actually has revolutionized our understanding of evolution. So we'll watch a part of this video. I want you guys, as you're watching this, be thinking about how is it that species can change and evolve.
Our planet has millions of species. Over 300,000 beetles alone. 17,000 butterflies. Thousands of mammals, fish, and birds, all astonishingly different. How did so many species come to be? To seek insights into that question, researchers are focusing on places where species recently arose, such as the remote Galapagos Islands.
Scientists are making observations and conducting experiments that would have surprised Charles Darwin. And they're discovering new insights into what the great naturalist called the mystery of mysteries: how new species form.
The Galapagos Islands are one of the most spectacular landscapes in the world, home to a variety of species that live nowhere else. Biologists Peter and Rosemary Grant have been seeking answers to how species arise by focusing on one of the smaller islands, called Daphne Major.
When we started out, we had no plan for the long term. In fact, we thought it was just going to be just a few years, maybe 2 years.
2 years have turned into a 40-year odyssey. The grants have returned every summer since 1973.
Oh, that's a bird.
Is that 306?
Okay, that's
306.
metal 6.
Here, they've made some of the most remarkable observations in the history of field research as they studied the famed Galapagos finches. The finches were first brought to scientists' attention by Charles Darwin, when his voyage around South America brought him to this cluster of islands, 600 miles from mainland Ecuador. These volcanic islands are geologically young. They began rising from the ocean floor less than 5 million years ago. At first devoid of life, they now support a modest number of species. Among them, 13 species of finches, found in various combinations on the different islands. The birds live in diverse habitats.
The islands are very different from each other. They differ in size, they differ in topography, and in height.
Larger trees grow at higher elevations, while low islands have mostly cactus, grasses, and shrubs. In these diverse habitats, the finches have evolved many ways to survive.
So, Rosemary, what's the important difference between these birds?
This little warbler finch with its very fine needle-like beak is perfect for picking off insects. This one is the woodpecker finch with a rather more robust beak. It concentrates on beetle larvae and termite larvae. Then we have the cactus finch with a much longer, sharp pointed beak which probes into cactus flowers. And then these three species are the large, medium, and small ground finches. So, Sean, the basic idea is the beaks are tools, and you need the right tool for the right job.
The finches look so different that Darwin first mistook them for entirely unrelated kinds of birds. How did the Galapagos end up with so many species of finches?
In terms of the actual history of the
Alright, so we'll pause there. I will actually put this video up on Schoology, where I'll actually even put this recording there as well. But anyways, they go into further showing of what the data they gathered and stuff like that. I have the data here, so we're actually going to look at that. But very fascinating, the information that they're getting. So to get started, give you a little background about these finches. So these finches, as they talked about, there's 13 different species. They all have different variations in their beaks. And where they do this research is it's in the Galapagos. It's on a specific island called Daphne Major. Now, Daphne Major, it's not the pretty. There's times where it can be very, very pretty, but it can be very, very harsh environment as well. And so what they were doing is, as like they talked about in the video, they've been taking data for so they started in the 1970s. They've been doing it since then, and they have data of every single year. And what they do is they'll go and they'll measure, take a bunch of different measurements. They'll measure the weight of the bird, and the size of the beak and things like that, and they'll take data on this, and they'll actually tag these birds so that they can keep watch of them every single year throughout the entire lifespan of these birds. And why Daphne Major is so awesome is because it's such a small island that that it's an easy experiment for them that they can keep track of those birds each year. And the island's so far away that the birds won't travel to a different island. They'll stay at that island the duration of their lives. And so it's a really good one. Anyways, what was interesting for them, and the video talks about this further, is there was a time where there was a huge drought. And so this is showing you that drought right here. So this was before the drought, 1976. During 1977 was the massive drought that occurred. And this is data that they saw. So before the drought, they saw an average. So this is showing how many birds there were that had this certain size of beak. And you can see that the average size was about 8.8 millimeters, I think is what they're measuring in, or centimeters. Definitely not centimeters, so it'd be millimeters. Excuse me. Anyways, and they saw that it was 8.8 was the average there. But then after the huge drought that occurred, they saw a huge shift to larger beaks, so about 9.8. And you guys could speculate of why. Since I'm not there to ask this question and get your feedback. But basically, the bigger the beak size, the better, because the seeds that were populated during that time, all the little seeds were eaten up real quickly. Because of the drought, the plants and stuff did not make more seeds and food for the finches to eat. And so what was left was the hard seeds from bigger trees. And so the bigger the beak size, they were able to crack into those seeds and survive more. Again, you can see that it didn't apply. One organism did not evolve. The population evolved. And how they did that is the beaks that had this size, or the birds that had this size of beak, died. They were not able to reproduce as much. While the ones that were in 9.8 size, they did survive in the 10.3 and the 10.8, and they were able to reproduce. And now we see a total shift in the population of that phenotype. So what is natural selection? So natural selection, we know it acts on individuals, but only populations can evolve because of it. Okay, so it acts on individuals individually, in that one will die and one will survive and be able to reproduce and pass on its information. And make sure you understand that not all change over time is a result of natural selection. Maybe there was just a change because of other factors, and we'll talk about these other factors later. So one last video that we'll watch on this concept. And while you're watching this thing, it's going to talk about some recipes that make natural selection occur. So I want you guys to jot these down in your notes. What are the 3 main things that would cause natural selection?
Recipe for natural selection. Sometimes a trait becomes more or less frequent in a population over time. But not all change over time is the result of natural selection. Natural selection needs 3 ingredients: variation, heritability, and reproductive advantage. Variation means that for a certain trait there are differences between individuals. Heritability means that those differences come from genes that pass from parents to offspring. Heritable differences are written in DNA. Reproductive advantage means that individuals with a certain trait are more successful at reproducing than others. Those with the most favorable traits reproduce, passing their genes to the next generation. Over multiple generations, unfavorable variations decrease in a population, and favorable ones become more common. If any of these ingredients are missing, then it's not natural selection.
Okay.
Recipe for natural
I
selection.
don't want you to play again. Okay, there we go. So hopefully you got those 3 different things, the recipes for natural selection there. Without those 3, it's not natural selection. It's something else. Okay. So when we're looking at adaptation, I want you to understand, I use this term a lot. So I say this organism is better adapted for its environment. What I mean by that is it has the advantageous phenotype. And so when we do that, it will lead to that organism having that adaptation. It would be better off, better suited for its environment. Okay? All right, so today is what I'm going to have you guys do, and this will carry on until tomorrow as well. So Monday and Tuesday, you will be doing this. It will be due Tuesday at the end of class. We're going to apply and look into this concept of natural selection a little bit more. I bet you this is just another little review for some of you, but we're going to do it nonetheless just to get you guys prepped. So let me pull up what you guys will be doing. So first of all, on Schoology, let me pull it up here. I have linked all this stuff there. And again, I will put this video in there too, so you can watch it if you weren't able to get everything. Let's see. Okay, here we go. So here is the course. If you go down here to Population Genetics and Evolution, again, I will have my video up here at the very start, but you'll go into this Pocket Mouse Evolution. There's a video that you'll need to watch here, and it's just right here, okay? And it's going to talk about these mice that are in, I believe, Arizona. Anyways, and they've seen some interesting stuff come from that. So again, that's what you'll start doing right there. Watch that. Excuse me. And then what you'll do is, I've got these printed out, so you'll need to get these, but they're developing an explanation for mouse fur color. Let me pull this up so you can kind of see what this looks like. And it'll actually have two parts to it here. Let's see. Okay. So this is kind of what it looks like. So developing an explanation for mouse fur color. Again, you will start by watching this video and it'll talk about that. Let's see. Yeah. So it's going to talk about these different phenotypes, what they have observed in these mice. And as you're watching it, so begin watching the short film, blah, 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 blah. And then this gear will answer these few questions here. Got the procedure there for you. And then what you'll be able to do is start analyzing some data to get some information. And so the data will also be included into your thing. If I have it here, let's see. Yeah, so here it is. So here's the data. So data set 1, data set 2, and data set 3. And again, I will include these in Schoology as well if you'd like the colored version of some of those. But anyways, you will get some data and look that up there and answer these questions, okay? Couple things I'm going to be looking for, you guys. There's going to be several of these. Again, you are making explanations for this, so this should not be a one-sentence thing. For example, this right here, make a claim about whether differences in fur color are inherited. Support your claim with evidence from Figure 3. Okay, so you guys, this needs to follow claim, evidence, reasoning. You'll make a claim, which will be one sentence. You'll have your evidence, that'll be 1 or 2 sentences, and then you will have an explanation, or what we call reasoning. And so your reasoning will be several sentences of you explaining how that evidence supports your claim using concepts of evolution and natural selection. Okay, so if you do not refer to those concepts in your explanations, you're going to get docked points on this. So anyways, that's what you'll do right here. Again, I'm giving you 2 days on this, so please, please, please spend some time on that. There is one part here at the very bottom where it says apply. It'll say humans, it'll bring this application. So we actually have this exact same gene in us, the MC1R gene that will code for pigments in our skin that actually causes melanocytes to create melanin. And yeah, so anyways, that's where a lot of mutations can happen, where melanoma occurs and stuff like that. is on this. It's not on this gene. We've been actually learning about what caused melanoma. A very well, I guess a mutation could happen right here, which could cause a could cause cancer, but we know it as the BRAF gene is the other one that does this. But anyways, I will have another page that I want you to do based on this information. One thing that I forgot to talk about is as you are watching this video, you are going to never mind. I'm thinking something else. Explanation. No, that's what we'll do. Okay, never mind. I'll stick with what I've said. So anyways, I will have one more page for you guys, another lab that you will do, and it looks like this one. Let's see. Right here. So this is just zooming in. It's not really that long, but it'll be just an addition to what you'll be doing. So looking down at this last question right here, the MC1R gene, this one right here, you'll actually be coding the MC1R gene in mice. So you'll be applying some of those concepts of, as you guys know, changing the mRNA code to the amino acid protein sequence. Using that, you'll be able to answer some basic questions. I will also include the codon wheel here. This codon wheel is specific for mRNA because it's got uracil in there, the U, instead of thymine. And so, anyways, I'll include that in there for you guys to use. And both of these assignments should be stapled together and will be turned in on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, I'll have another video for you guys going into one more lab that I'll have you guys do before I get back on Thursday. Anyways, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email me. I hope this video went through everything that you guys need. Anyways, talk to you guys later.